Hey everyone, back again with It's All Good here. And today, if you're new to the channel, again, just want to look at some questions here that Hafa's put through to me. So let's have a look at them. I'll go for the first one. Is it wrong to have doubts about the Bible or about God? I don't think it's wrong, but also I would say maybe it's kind of actually a bit impossible actually to not have doubts. I think doubt is part of the human experience. And I think if we go back and we look over, particularly down through the ages in terms of, Christian history, we go back into the scriptures, right the way back, we see people who had doubts. I don't think God is freaked out by our doubts either. So I think in short, the answer is no. I don't think it's wrong to have doubts about God or about the Bible. One thing I would say though is that, and this is where just making it real in terms of everyday life, if I have doubts about a certain person, or if I have, maybe I'm worried about our friendship, or maybe I'm worried about, where I'm at with someone. One thing that's not good to do is to go away and think about that a lot and, ruminate on it and be kind of, thinking. When actually the most important thing I should do is actually go to my friend and go, listen, are we okay? Like, we haven't sort of chatted for a while, or, just your body language. I'm just wondering where we're at the moment. And I think it's the same with God, because we have a relationship with God. If we feel like there's some doubts there's a bit of distance, there's a bit of coldness, I think the best thing to do with our doubts is to bring it to God. And there's probably nobody better in the Bible at this than a guy called David. And David was great at this. And he was just really raw, honest with God. What's going on with this? Why is this happening? How come this is going down? Where are you? What are you doing? And there's times where, when you read some of the Psalms that David wrote, you'd be kind of saying to yourself, my goodness, is this guy, is he still believing in God? Like, where is he at with God? But I think the great thing with David was he'd such a great relationship with God. He was able to bring any question, even his struggles, he was able to bring them to God. And I think we need to do the same. Okay, second question. If God is good and all powerful, why is there so much suffering in the world? Cracking question. I think one of the things that a lot of people make a mistake on is that they think that because, if I believe in God, then that means I just believe in God. But actually, if you truly believe in God, you also believe in an evil force. You also believe that there is Satan. So therefore, once you understand that there is God, you also have to understand that there is Satan. And then you have to understand that there is going to be this clash between the two kingdoms. There's light, there's darkness. So there's good and there's evil. So there is going to be this clash, and we as human beings, we're part of that game, if you want to call it that. We're part of that culture that's going on where, we have to kind of sometimes make our minds up about like, hey, am I going this way or am I going this way? And one of the things is that God does give us choices, and he created Satan, but he also gave Satan choices, and Satan made certain decisions with those choices, the same way we make very poor choices as well with the will that God has given us. And sadly, a lot of times we choose not to go God's way. We choose to go our own way. Sometimes, to be frankly honest with you, we choose to go down evil roads. We choose to go the wrong way. And oftentimes, even Jesus says that, there are, if you like, there's two ways. And he talks about a narrow lane, and he talks about a motorway. And unfortunately, most people, are on the motorway where they're going away from God, as opposed to on the narrow lane and trying to find their way back to God. So ultimately, God is all powerful in the sense that I believe that God, at the end of the day, is going to bring justice. He's going to, bring an end to everything. And I think God is ultimately going to, like a judge would do, things go on, there are bad things happening, but God will bring things to an end. There'll be justice. And in that sense, I think he's all powerful. But no, God is not some sort of all powerful in the sense that he's like, wants us to act like robots where we go around, we do exactly what we're told, and therefore God can control and micromanage everything. That's not the way God does things. So I think it's trying to understand what we mean by the term good and by the term all powerful. And in Jesus, we see an example of the way God is, it shows his power and shows his goodness. Jesus doesn't come down and take over everything and tell everyone what to do and go, right, this is it, guys, this is the way, the only way. He comes down and he lives, and as an example, he shows us how we should live. He uses the power of God to turn around evil things, to heal people, to give sight back to the blind. to give hearing to those that were deaf, to set the captives free. He uses his power to do that. And that is the same thing that God is doing today. And he calls us to do the same thing as well, to join with him in using the power that we have and the goodness that God's put in us to do good works, to do good things, even in the face of evil and even in the face of Satan and even in the face of, injustice. God calls us to stand up and to use our power in that way, not to try and take over, not to dominate, not to force people to be acting a certain way. So why does the church preach forgiveness but often struggles to forgive certain people? Wow, what a great question. And yeah, I've often wondered the same question myself. In fact, I've often looked at my own life and gone, well, you're supposed to be a Christian. How come, why am I not more forgiving? And I think right off the bat, the first thing I'd want to say is that I think when it comes to forgiveness, Christians should follow Jesus. And in that sense, we should be the most forgiving organization, group of people, whatever you want to call it, in the world, because there's absolutely nobody on the planet that does forgiveness like Jesus. And I think that probably also kind of brings me to my next point, which is that I think Jesus sets an incredibly high bar for forgiveness, and so much higher than absolutely everybody else, any other religious figure, any other, teacher, mentor, life coach, whatever you want to call it. His teachings on forgiveness are just on another level. And I think that we as human beings, we find this very, very difficult to deal with. There's a great conversation in the Bible between Peter and Jesus, and, Peter's kind of listening to what Jesus is saying about forgiveness. And he says, should we forgive them 7 times? And Jesus says, no, not just 7 times, but 70 times 7. In other words, Peter, stop counting. Because I think Peter was sitting there kind of going, okay, so if John does that to annoy me again, then I'm technically, I won't have to get, I won't have to forgive him, I'll be able to finally go, no, I've got you. And I think that's the problem with us, is that we are, because of our sin nature, we are very self-centered, self-absorbed. We see everything from our perspective. So when someone sins against us, we kind of, the sense of injustice, the sense of hey, listen, that's it, I'm cutting you off. And we see it on social media all the time. We see it, unfortunately, in our companies, in the places where we work, in our communities where we hang out. We see people with that kind of a mentality, you cross me once, you're done. But with Jesus, what we see is not so much that you cross me, but Jesus said, I'm going to get up on that cross and I'm going to die for not just, for everyone's sin. And, from our perspective, Jesus is dying for our sin. He pays for our forgiveness. And therefore, the challenge for us is to extend that forgiveness that we've been shown, to give it to other people. So Jesus says, as I have forgiven you, so you now must forgive other people. And what we see with Jesus' love is it's incredibly unconditional. We see that Jesus' forgiveness he shows an unbelievable amount of patience. Now, that doesn't mean that we're a doormat either. There are boundaries that we need to put back up, but we do need to learn to forgive. There's a lot I could say more about this, so I'm just going to point downwards and say Hafa will put some linked in the description there, or put it up on screen, where there's a series of videos I did called Lergus, all about forgiveness and the power of forgiveness. And really quickly before I go, I just want to say, it's one thing to question whether, Christians and churches and whatever, why are they not more forgiving? But I would ask you, turn the question back on yourself and say, where am I at with forgiveness? And I want to encourage you right now and just say, there is incredible power in Jesus and in forgiveness. And the amount of stuff that will lift off your life when you learn to be like Jesus and to forgive and to walk in his forgiveness, it's truly life-changing. So let me encourage you to have a look at that. So guys, it's been great hanging out again today, and I hope you've enjoyed some of the questions. Obviously, we want to grow this channel and grow this community, so if you'd like to like and subscribe, a big thing for me is leave comments. We'd love to hear, where are you from? We saw some of the analytics and we're seeing people from all kinds of countries, but I'd love to know who you are, where you're writing from, and what's your perspective and your opinions. Let's get a bit of discussion going in the comments as well, would be great. Looking forward to the next set of videos, and hopefully we will see you soon. It's all good.